there, welcome to the channel or welcome back. I'm Angela, and before we get started, I first like to say a big thank you to all of you guys who had such nice supportive comments about my new serger that I got recently. It was overwhelming, just the support that you guys showed, and I thank you for that so much. And a few of the comments that I received kind of led me to choosing the topic for today's chat. And that is some helpful hints to help us get over any fears we might have about getting and using new sewing equipment. If that sounds interesting, stick around. So I did hear from a number of you that commented that maybe you bought a serger a year ago or maybe even more, and you were a little bit hesitant about using it and maybe hadn't even taken it out of the box yet. And I'm here to tell you that I can so relate to that. I have been there, done that with some pieces of gardening equipment over the years, and I thought, oh, this new equipment's going to really up my gardening game and I can't wait to use it. And then I got it and it sat in the box and I was afraid to turn it on or plug it in, and had to have a little support and a little poke and a nudge from my husband to actually use the new equipment. So I can totally relate. But I thought that might be that this would be a good opportunity to talk about some of the fears that we may have when we get new equipment. And I'm going to kind of gear this video specifically to sewing equipment because that's kind of the one thing that we all have in common here on the channel. But you could apply these tips to maybe other facets of your life where you've bought something. Maybe it was a new cooking piece of equipment, maybe an Instant Pot or a toaster oven where oh, I don't know what to do with it. I got it and now I don't know what to do with it. So I kind of did a little bit of deep dive into my own thought process about why I was not hesitant to use this serger when it took me a couple of years to actually get over the fear and just get it. And I kind of was afraid that after I finally pulled the trigger and got the thing, that I wouldn't do anything with it. So I did employ some techniques or just a few little helpful things that helped me to just jump right in when I got my serger. And I'd like to share those with you guys, along with a couple of other helpful hints that I've heard from other places around the internet. So if you guys are ready, if that sounds interesting, let's go ahead and talk about these helpful hints. So the first one, and these are not necessarily in order, but a couple of them might be wise to do one before the next, but in general, these are not in any order. So one thing that I did before even getting my serger, once I had kind of narrowed it down to this one was the one I was going to go with, I watched, I searched on YouTube or Google in general, and I watched as many videos as I could on this that I thought would be helpful. A lot of those were how to thread it, because that was my big fear with getting a serger, one of my big fears. So I watched a number of threading videos for this particular model, and not just overall, but for this one, so that by the time the thing got here, by the time I ordered it, received it, I already felt like I kind of had a leg up and it was a little bit less intimidating. And I will link to a really good threading video in the description below. It's geared specifically on how to do this model, but it might kind of be just a good overall how to thread a serger video for any of you guys that are a little bit unsure. It's by far the best one that I've seen. I also watched a bunch of videos on just general maintenance, just general how to use it. So I felt like doing that ahead of time kind of gave me a little bit of confidence. Okay, it's not the big bad scary serger that I was thinking it would be. So I would say just find as many helpful videos as you can. And the next thing would be to, once you get the piece of equipment, actually read the manual. I'm kind of notorious in our household here for just jumping in. I don't like to read instructions. They're confusing for me a lot of the times. So I just kind of just plunge full speed ahead. And Sometimes that's a good thing, but it's not always a good thing. So with this, I actually sat down with the manual and I kind of read it cover to cover for the most part. There were a couple of sections that I kind of just skimmed over a little bit that I'll come back to once I've gotten like the more advanced features that let me get a little bit of general usage under my belt, and then I'll come back to those. But I would say definitely go through the manual. You might find it to be your best friend. And specifically, when you're just setting up your machine, look at, let me see if I can grab the manual. Uh, so this is the one for my brother Serger here. And I think that pretty much like any sewing machine I've ever had, or kind of most pieces of just equipment in general, will do a little illustration of the equipment along with the numerical guidelines of what is what, like going from like 1 through 30, everything from the thread tree, which is this piece at the top, all the way down to the knife lever, which is a piece over here on the side of the machine. So that was kind of the first thing that I did after reading like the general, um, the general warnings and stuff. I have to admit, I kind of just glossed over those. But I did spend some time looking at that chart or the diagram. And then I also spent some time looking at the accessories that came with the machine. That way, I know what these extra feet do. They're not just going to sit in the little baggie forever and ever. I might think, oh, yeah, it has a gathering foot. I'm going to give that a try. So I would say that this is definitely a good, helpful hint to just make you feel a little bit more comfortable with your new machine. I've got some notes here, so pardon me if I check these real quick. Then the next one, and this one might sound a little, I don't know what the right word is. I don't want to like dumb this down for any of us, but one thing that I kind of do when a process seems overwhelming is to break it into tiny steps, like even baby steps. And I employ this technique not just with new equipment, but if there's a big project that I need to do or a household task that I'm just dreading, or it's too much and I just can't deal with it. Break it into tiny steps. And I mean tiny steps. So for instance, with the serger, maybe the first thing you would do is just to open the box, look in the box and take the pieces out. And if that's all you do for that particular step, then let that be. And it's a manageable, it's not too overloading. Or maybe one of the steps initial that you could do is just to make space. Like I had to get a new little desk here to have room for both of the machines. So I did that, and I was mentally preparing myself to bring the machine in and making sure I had this spot right here open because I did have another smaller machine there. So I prepped the little area so it had a place. And then maybe the next thing that you do is to just plug it in. I know this sounds kind of crazy that you can just think about it in these tiny steps. And I actually, a few years back, took a little, I guess like a mini course with a man who he's a like a life coach, I guess you would say. He's a nutritionist, but he also does some like life coaching. And he has a program called Small Steppers. And that's one of my big takeaways. Like the main premise of that course was to just take tiny steps. And if you start feeling overwhelmed, back it down. Don't think about like, oh, I have to get this out, plug it in, start using it. Just do the very next step. And if that's it, just let that be and just live with that for a little while. So I know that I don't want this to sound too like condescending or any. That's not like that my attitude about this at all. It's just an approach that I know has worked for me in times when I felt like completely out of my depth or overwhelmed. But I think with this, I did not need to do that so much because I had watched all those videos up front. And I also, I did not actually thinking about it. I turned it on and just started playing with it before I read the manual. But I think having watched all those videos really, really got me a little more comfortable with it. Like, oh, I already know how this thing works because I've seen like half a dozen people on YouTube show me how it works. So, just some little helpful hints. I would say if any of these are helpful for you, I'd be happy to hear it. Hopefully, at least some of them might be if you're kind of in this situation. I'm going to grab my notes here because I did give this a lot of thought before putting this video together. And the next thing that you might consider doing is like when you're ready, just turn it on and just take a scrap and just run it through because it came threaded. And I'm guessing that maybe most sergers do come threaded. I'm kind of getting that impression and could be wrong, but just take a couple of scraps under there and just do a straight seam. And you don't have to worry right now about changing out the feet. Don't have to change the thread out right now. Just practice running scraps through and then you can kind of get excited about it. I think when I did that, I was like really jazzed about it. And so that was increasing my comfort level. And then the next thing I was ready to, like, I want to make a project. So I just started with something very simple. It was just a loose tank top that I've made before. It was just has a front and a back, and then the neck binding and the arm side binding. So very simple. I've made it, like I mentioned once before, with my actual sewing machine. So I pulled those pattern pieces out, and in fact, it was just a pattern that I had traced from an old shirt that I had gotten from Old Navy years ago and loved. I love the style and the fit, and that I used my existing garment to make pattern pieces. And I thought, I was wanting to make that anyway this month, so I'm going to try that on the serger. So I went ahead and just did it. And I'm going to show you it right now. It came out pretty well. So it's kind of like a swingy tank top. This is just a jersey knit. It's a thin, lightweight jersey. It'll be nice for really hot days. And it's not perfect. I did have, there's a little bit of with the neck binding where it's kind of, bunched up. But I mean, it's fine to wear just for hanging out and, on a hot summer day. And so when I made this, I just used the threads that came already threaded in the machine, which were 4 different colors. But I don't really think it mattered. I'm going to hold it up so you can see. I don't know if the 4 colors are showing, like yellow, red, green, and blue. But once again, it's on the inside, so it didn't matter. But making this garment out of just some cheaper jersey that I've had in my stash for a long time, it didn't matter if I messed this up. It didn't really use that much fabric, and it's just like a cheap, probably cotton, maybe a cotton blend jersey. Uh, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna just try it. And it worked out pretty well overall. I mean, I've got some work to do, but it was a good practice piece. And I'm kind of new to sewing with knits in general. So, I can see, some areas for improvement, but I'll get there. And so now what I'm going to do is to use this as kind of like the first test garment. It is definitely a wearable garment, but I noticed some fitting issues that I want to change, and I made those adjustments on my pattern pieces. And I'm going to try it again on the serger with the adjusted pattern pieces. And once again, I'm just going to use a piece of like cheaper thin jersey knit that it doesn't matter if I mess up because that's how we learn. That is the only way that we learn, really. I mean, we can study it and watch all the videos in the world, but not until we get some skin in the game, get hands on, practice, practice, try and try again, and all those kind of analogies that we say when we're learning. That is the truth, is like totally the truth. And that's how we learn. And yeah, it's not perfect for sure. I can see definitely issues with the arm side binding, but it fits. I can wear it around the house or if I'm hanging out outside. And I call that a success. And my next one will be a little bit better. So that could be another little helpful tip for starting to use your new serger or new sewing machine. Start with a very simple garment after you've practiced on some scraps. And the last helpful tip that I can think of, if this is an option for you in your area, maybe you could take some in-person classes. Now, I got my serger on Amazon. I'll link to it below. It's just the Brother 1034D, so very basic model. But if you get your serger from a sewing machine shop, like in your town or your city, there's a very good chance that they will offer classes or at least give you a couple of upfront, like initial one-on-one lessons, at least one. I know the place where I was going to get the other serger that was in the running, the Viking, they offered I could come back as much as I wanted and they would work with me. And that was kind of a main draw for that machine, other than that I love Viking machines. And I was so close to doing that one, but because I had gotten good feedback about this brother, there are a lot of good reviews, and because there were so many helpful instructional videos on YouTube, that I felt comfortable getting this model, and without knowing that I wasn't going to be able to have the one-on-one instructions. So it's working out so far. I've got a long way to go, and I do want to really learn all the other features. One of you guys suggested that there's a really good book called The Serger's Technique Bible. I did go ahead and order that on Amazon. It's right over there on my table. Maybe I'll show you that on the next video. But there's all kinds of things you can do with the serger besides just, serge seams. So I'm kind of excited to see what it has to offer, and I'll get there. But like I mentioned, I'm going to go back to my very small step approach and not feel overwhelmed. Like I have to learn all these things all at once. I still haven't even taken full advantage of my Janome here, and I've had it for 3 years. Now I have done a lot with it. I've used a lot of the feet, but I know it has a lot more capabilities, but we'll get there. It just takes a while. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys. If you are kind of like me and have a little trepidation about trying something so outside of your comfort zone, it seems a little bit intimidating, that you got this, we can do this, and we'll learn together. If you guys have any other helpful hints for being more comfortable with getting new equipment, learning how to use new equipment, I would love it if you would share those in the comments below. That would be helpful for a lot of us probably. And once again, thank you guys so much for all of your support on this new serger. I appreciate it. And the last thing, and then we'll go ahead and sign off, I would like to invite you to take a look at the membership for the channel. So this is it's sort of like Patreon, if you're familiar with that. There's a small monthly fee, but you get extra content, and there's a monthly live chat. It's kind of a good way to help support the channel if you're interested, and if you want a little bit extra, no pressure. I am just thankful that you guys watch and enjoy the videos. There are just a couple of us in the membership right now, and we would love it to have some more friends to chat with every month. So take a look at that if you're interested. If not, no big deal. And I hope that you are having a great week, and I will talk to you later on. Bye.